At 30, I set a goal to double my income from 30,000 a year to 60,000. I spent 2 years trying to double my income with 9 different side hustles, but I finally realized there was a better way to reach my goal. By changing my approach and following 5 simple steps, I was able to reach my goal in only 6 months. Here's how. So, when I set this goal for myself, I was working as an assistant grower in a greenhouse. It was a decent job, but I wasn't making enough to live on my own. And after trying 9 different side hustles in order to improve my income, I had the thought, if I'm currently making the most money at my job, then why don't I focus on improving my earning potential there instead of starting a second income from scratch? So, for step one, I researched my options. For this, I did a simple Google search to see what type of jobs within a greenhouse setting would get me to that goal of doubling my income. What I found was that either becoming a horticultural technician or a head grower in a greenhouse would get me to that goal. This was a big eye opening moment for me because I realized I was never going to reach this goal working at my current job because the head grower at the company that I worked for was also the owner. So, in order to double my income, I was going to have to leave the safety and comfort of my current job. But once I had that information, I was able to move on to step two, which was identifying the gap. So once I knew the type of job that I was going to be applying for, I went on Indeed and I started looking for jobs as head growers and horticultural technicians, not to apply for, but just to look at what sort of qualifications they were looking for so I could figure out where the gap was between where I am and where I needed to be in order to actually get those jobs. So at the time, most of them were looking for 3 to 5 years of experience. They were also generally looking for some sort of education, usually at least a diploma in horticulture or something similar, which I have. Most of the job positions also listed knowing Spanish as a asset, as well as having experience in a wide range of greenhouse tasks. And at the time, I had had 2 years of experience working in a greenhouse. So I figured if I stayed where I was for one more year, that would close the gap there and I'd be able to meet that requirement. My main responsibility at work was propagation. So I knew I needed to look for opportunities to gain more diverse experience at work. And I did know a little bit of Spanish, but that was definitely an area that I could improve in. So once I had a good understanding of where I was versus where I needed to be, I moved on to step three, which was closing the gap. So I worked on doing this at work by looking for opportunities to take on any new tasks and to gain experience doing different things. So basically, anytime I heard somebody say, "Oh, I don't want to do this," I would say, "I'll do it." And one of the first things that I was able to take over was watering the plants. My coworker who normally did it was very busy and it was something that he didn't really enjoy doing. So I started off slow just by saying, what if I take over for you on Monday because, that's a day you're really busy and it's harder for you to keep everything, watered over summer. And then from there, I slowly started adding more days until it became one of my main responsibilities. Another opportunity that I was able to find was we had someone who was in charge of managing our pests, and he went away for 3 weeks. And so someone had to cover that while he was gone. That was something I also volunteered for, so I got 3 weeks of experience doing that. Outside of work, I also signed up for an 8-week Spanish class at my local community center, which ended up being a really great investment for me because not only was I learning Spanish within the class, but it also put me in a situation where I was able to meet other people who are working towards the same goal. And so we started getting together 1 day a week outside of class in order to practice together. And then on top of that, a bunch of us got together and we bought like the family plan for Duolingo so that we could practice even more. And we could also like cheer each other on within the app and help hold each other accountable and things like that. So that made the process of learning Spanish and improving on that goal so much easier because I had a support system behind it. I also did a few other things to help close the gap that I thought might help me stand out a bit more. So for one thing, I took a free micro credential course that I found online that was about carbon sequestration in watersheds, which really doesn't have anything to do with working in a greenhouse, but I felt like by including something like that on my resume, it would show that I'm still working on learning more about plants and about like the field that I'm working in. The other thing I did was I got my chainsaw safety license online. Again, not really directly tied to working in a greenhouse, but it was just something again that I felt would show I'm still working on improving and developing my skills. So after I had a few months of improving my skills and qualifications, I then moved on to step 4, which is looking for opportunities. A key thing that I did here was looking for job opportunities that I genuinely wanted. So I would look at things like the job description, obviously the pay was important, but I would also look up reviews on the company just to make sure that I thought that the company and the position felt right for me. Because even though my goal was to double my income, I didn't want to choose a job just based on that and end up working somewhere that I hated. Another important thing that I did while looking for opportunities is I didn't disqualify myself from applying to a job just because I didn't meet the qualifications perfectly. And I think this is a really important thing to avoid doing when you are looking for job opportunities. I think it's something that we as women really tend to do a lot. We don't want to apply to something unless we perfectly meet the expectations. But what I found in my experience is that it's better to let the people hiring disqualify you than disqualify yourself and not even try. Because I found that in a lot of situations, education especially doesn't end up being as important as experience. So if you have more than the required experience, but you're short on the education, I think it's still worth it to apply and just take a chance. And I say this because that was the situation that I was in when I landed the job that doubled my income. But I had one more step to follow before I actually found that job. So, step 5 is leveraging your connections. I had applied to a few positions on my own, but they didn't really pan out. And so I began telling everybody and anybody outside of work that I was looking to switch jobs and this is what I was looking for. And a few months later, a friend of mine called me because a friend of his had contacted him wondering if he had anybody that he could recommend for a horticultural technician job because somebody else had reached out to him. So once I told him that I was interested, I was able then to get into contact directly with the person who was looking to hire for the technician position and kind of give my little elevator pitch as to like why I'm the right choice. And I was able to more or less secure that opportunity before the job had even been posted, which is obviously a huge advantage. I did still take the time to look over the job description. The pay met my requirements, and I already knew that the company had had a good reputation, so I did apply for it. And on top of that, I was able to get a letter of recommendation from someone that they trusted, which again was a really big help. But again, I did not perfectly meet the qualifications. You know, they were looking for 6 months of experience. At that point, I had about 2.5 years. but they were also looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree, and I had a diploma. So if I had disqualified myself based on those requirements, I never would have ended up in this position. And I do think I still could have doubled my income, but it would have taken me who knows how much longer. So from the time that I started taking action to improve my skills to the time that I landed this new job, it was about 6 months. And I really do want to take a moment to encourage you to leverage your connections. And I know some people are going to say, I don't have any connections, but really anybody can be a connection. And it could be not only your friends, your family, your coworkers, past coworkers, teachers, classmates, but it can be the friend of a friend or the friend of a friend of a friend, you know? Like it's the more people that you have looking out for you, the more exposure you're going to get to those opportunities. And if you really truly don't have any connections, I highly encourage you to go make some. Whether that's going and taking, a class at a community center, which tend to be really cheap, or, going online and finding a school community that's focused on your goal or your profession and making contacts that way, because it really does give you a competitive advantage. And not only that, but there are people out there who are less competent than you and who are less qualified than you, who are going to be leveraging their connections. So why not level the playing field? Because it really can make all the difference. And now that I'm no longer living paycheck to paycheck, I have so much more energy and I'm so much less stressed. And I also feel so much more empowered to build the life that I really want for myself, which is why I've set a new goal for myself of becoming financially free by 40. And I'm working on achieving this in a few different ways. So, first, I'm investing a good portion of my income from my new job. Right now, I'm at about $700 a month that I'm investing. I am also still working on paying down debt. And so, once that's gone, I'll be able to add about another $500 a month to that investment. The second thing that I'm doing is creating content. So, my hope with this is that eventually I can build this into another income stream and take any money that I earn from this and apply that into my investing. And then the third thing that I'm doing is learning about real estate investing. Right now, I'm working towards saving up the down payment for my first rental property. And so that's the sort of things that I'm going to be creating videos about and documenting here on my channel. So if you'd like to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments, where are you now versus where you want to be? And I would encourage you to think a little bit about what you could do to close that gap and include that too if you can. And I'll see you in the next one.